Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this e-learning webinar on Getting the Job Done Cleanly, practical tips for reducing bribery and corruption in the field, created as part of International Charity Fraud Awareness Week. The week brings together everyone involved in the charity and not-for-profit sectors to raise awareness and share good practice in tackling fraud and financial crime. We encourage you to share this video and any of our other resources with your colleagues. I'm from the National Crime Agency's International Corruption Unit. We investigate corruption and acts of bribery by UK individuals and organisations overseas. We also investigate the subsequent laundering of the proceeds of corruption through the UK by criminal groups and corrupt politically exposed people, including foreign governments officials. This work also involves investigating charities, their employees and their agents who may have paid or received bribes. So why does bribery matter? Knowing how to protect your charity from bribery and corruption is particularly important if you're planning to operate overseas, especially in countries where corruption is endemic. In many countries, endemic corruption can be a key factor in civil disturbance and regime change. Corruption contributes to poverty and inequality, undermines good business, and threatens the integrity of financial markets. Bribery of public officials erodes public confidence in the judiciary and government and undermines the rule of law. Acts of bribery can also result in financial loss to countries, harming their development. When charities or their officials become involved in bribery, this can perpetuate the problem and may run counter to a charity's goals and intentions. The National Crime Agency has identified cases where charities have paid bribes to government officials in order to enable the delivery of aid to a region. Payment of these bribes diverts donors' funds away from the causes that they support. If a charity becomes known for paying bribes in a region, this may increase the frequency and persistence with which bribes are requested by government officials, further decreasing the funds available to deliver the charity's aims. Where a charity becomes known for paying bribes, this may harm the organisation's reputation amongst its donors, leading to a loss of support and reduced income. Some charities receive funding and contractual work from governments and aid agencies. This funding stream may be at risk if the charity becomes involved in the payment of bribes. A commitment to conduct business without paying bribes may be included as a clause within a contract to provide services. If a charity breaks the terms of this contractual clause, the contract may be withdrawn. Bribery legislation. It is recommended that charities take a risk-based approach, putting in place policies and procedures to comply with the relevant legislation for the country you are in. The UK Bribery Act 2010 creates a number of offences when the payment of bribes are offered, paid or received. The UK Bribery Act 2010 has a global reach and applied to UK nationals, foreign nationals resident in the UK, UK companies and foreign companies doing business in the UK. The UK Bribery Act also applies to any charity or person with a relationship with the UK, even if they, their employees or any other person acting on their behalf are operating overseas. Many other countries have similar far-reaching anti-bribery legislation. You must consider the anti-bribery legislation in both your home country and those in which your charity operates. Section 1 of the UK Bribery Act is an offence of bribing another person. This is where a person offers, promises or gives a financial or other advantage to another person, intending to induce them to carry out an improper function or activity or to reward them for such improper performance. Section 2 of the Act is related to being bribed by another person. It is where a person requests, agrees to receive or accepts a financial or other advantage in order to carry out an activity improperly themselves or by another person. Section 6 of the Act covers the bribery of foreign public officials with the intention to obtain or retain business. And Section 7 is the failure of commercial organisations to prevent bribery. A relevant commercial organisation is guilty of an offence if a person associated with it bribes another person intending to obtain or retain business for it, or obtain or retain an advantage in the conduct of business for it. This includes charities who may be liable for bribery committed by their staff if the bribe was paid to obtain an advantage for the charity. However, it is a defence for any organisation to show it had adequate procedures in place to prevent the payment of bribes by persons associated with it. Bribes are sometimes requested by public officials and decision makers in order to enable aid to reach where needed. These facilitation payments are illegal under the UK Bribery Act. The UK Ministry of Justice has developed 6 principles to assist individuals and organisations to assess and manage their bribery risk. Although these principles were produced in support of the UK Bribery Act, they are relevant to bribery prevention in any country. The first principle is to introduce proportionate procedures. An organisation's procedures to prevent bribery by persons associated with it should be proportionate to the bribery risk it faces and to the nature, scale and complexity of its activities. They should also be clear, practical, accessible, effectively implemented and enforced. Principle 2 relates to having top-level commitment to anti-bribery. For charities, this means its trustees and senior managers should be committed to preventing bribery by persons associated with it. Senior officials should foster a culture within the organisation in which bribery is never acceptable. Setting the correct tone from the top and leading by example will help to build commitment to anti-bribery efforts throughout the organisation. Under the third principle, organisations should assess the nature and extent of its exposure to potential external and internal risks of bribery. The assessment should be periodic, informed and documented. Where the charity operations change or the charity begins operating in new countries, the risk should be assessed. Principle 4 encourages organisations to apply due diligence procedures, taking a proportionate and risk-based approach in respect of persons who perform or will perform services for or on behalf of the organisation is vital if bribery risks are to be mitigated. And Principle 5 encourages organisations to ensure that its bribery prevention policies and procedures are embedded and understood throughout the organisation through internal and external communication, including training that is proportionate to the risk it faces. Even after implementing anti-bribery policies, procedures and training, Principle 6 calls on organisations to monitor and review their procedures designed to prevent bribery by persons associated with it and make improvements where necessary. Anti-bribery compliance should be an ongoing process with the policies and procedures being adapted and improved in response to situations as they arise. The better you understand the bribery risks you face, the more effective your efforts to prevent bribery are likely to be. A zero tolerance to bribery should be adopted. Penalties for bribery for both the organisation and its employees can be severe. For example, under the UK Bribery Act, the penalty for bribery is up to 10 years imprisonment and/or an unlimited fine. The cultures and customs of a country should be understood in order to mitigate the risk of bribery. In some parts of the world, bribery can be deeply embedded in cultures, and charity officials might be tempted to adopt and conform to prevailing custom or local standards and values. Charities should ensure that, along with their own employees, those they partner with or enter contracts with are aware of and comply with anti-bribery policies and procedures. The payment of bribes by agents of a charity and on their behalf does not remove the charity's liability for failing to prevent bribery. Employees should be encouraged to report risks they identify to the charity so that these risks can be incorporated within a risk assessment, which steps put in place to mitigate these risks. Employees should be aware of bribes requested by officials which are not a direct request for payment, such as a political party donation, donation to a social development fund, or payment of school fees. Staff should be given clear guidance on business, entertainment, gifts and hospitality. Hospitality is acceptable if it serves the purpose of building a business relationship, but it must not be of an appropriate value and not intended to obtain a business advantage. There is no clear line as to when that happens. Ultimately, decisions should be made on a well-reasoned basis. A clear policy can help staff and agents make appropriate decisions. Regular awareness and training sessions in bribery and corruption should be conducted as a matter of course. Be conscious of facilitation payments, which are small-scale payments paid to secure routine government action. These are considered bribes under the UK Bribery Act. We have received reports from organisations operating overseas that once they implemented appropriate policies and consistently refused to pay bribes when requested, soon their reputation for refusal grew and staff were no longer pressured for bribes. So how to report bribery? If you identify any individuals or organisations that are involved in paying or receiving bribes, refer to the relevant country's anti-bribery reporting guidelines. If you identify UK individuals or organisations paying or receiving bribes overseas, please email contact.icu@nca.gov.uk. For further details on the types of information that will be helpful to law enforcement when reporting allegations of bribery and corruption, please visit the National Crime Agency website and see the Bribery, Corruption and Sanctions of Agents pages within the What We Do section. To obtain further information and guidance on managing the risk of bribery and corruption, please see the Bribery and Corruption section of the UK Charity Commission Compliance Toolkit and the Ministry of Justice Bribery Act 2010 guidance document. Thank you for listening. Please remember to check out the other free resources created as part of the week, which are available on our online hub. Together, we can keep charity fraud out.